or our water quality presentation by focusing. We would like to continue our water quality presentation with a section on water sanitation. I think this is one of the greatest opportunities for us to, on a daily basis, to maintain a good, safe water supply for our animals, whether it's turkeys, pigs, or dairy cows even. And I'm going to start by talking about chlorine because it's gotten a lot of bad rap, and certainly most of the animal health product suppliers who supply things like water sanitizer products, they don't make much money off of chlorine, so it's kind of the unsung hero. So today I'm going to be the advocate for chlorine in order to make sure that everybody understands its value in water sanitation programs. So starting out, it's a great sanitizer, but we got to remember it's not perfect. It's going to be best when the pH is in a range of 4 to 7. We don't have enough present for the bacterial challenge present, then the bacteria is going to survive. Cold water. I know it never gets cold in Canada, but just in case you start getting those days where that water coming in is really cold, then that chlorine is just not going to be as activated in that water. If it's water's dirty, short exposure time, these growth stage type of bacteria present. Again, if we're not controlling the biofilm, it's just going to chew up that chlorine. It's not going to have any value for us. And something that we overlook a lot of times is the source of our chlorine. We know the age, storage conditions of bleach, if you will. How old is it? How long has it been sitting on the farm as an open container? Those things affect it. So I think abuse and misuse of chlorine results in disease breakthrough. Many times people tell me like, well, that chlorine is just not working for me. Well, it's not the chlorine that's not working. It's the way that chlorine's being used that's not working. So what we want to kind of talk about now is just our goal. We want to shoot for about 2 to 4 parts per million free chlorine. And we want to target the same reading beginning and end of the lines. And that will tell us if we got the same amount of free chlorine from beginning to end, then that tells us A, the system is clean. We don't have any biofilm chewing up our chlorine. And B, we don't have any mineral contaminants that are challenging it. The iron, the manganese, the sulfur chewing up that chlorine that says those minerals might be there and causing problems for us too. So we might need a little more than this for disease control or problem farms. There's a complex in our area that has really come to believe that 6 to 8 parts per million chlorine is the ticket for controlling some of their respiratory health challenges, and it's working well for them. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about why I think they're probably getting some benefit that way. Again, the cleaner the system, the less we're required. I've seen operations that do an excellent job with that line cleaning between flocks and their daily water sanitation program. And they can get away with maybe 0.5 to 1 parts per million chlorine and have good value. We also want to check total and free chlorine. Once those two numbers, again, are very close to each other, then we know the system's clean, because total is going to reflect all the chlorine present, including the chlorine that's tied up or inactivated. Free is going to reflect the chlorine that's available to control any potential challenges that might show up into the water and want to stress our animals. If we smell chlorine, then we're smelling that chlorine reacting with the organics in the water, the biofilm. So again, the cleaner the system, the less you're going to notice that chlorine is in the water. And if we have naturally high chloride levels in the water, and I put this in the range of over 200 to 250 parts per million chlorides or sodium, then chlorine is not the best sanitizer choice. You're just adding to that problem of salt, if you will, in the water by using chlorine products when you have high chloride, high sodium levels. So touch a minute about pH, how it affects chlorine. When we have a neutral pH, we tend to have slightly more of the acid form of chlorine in the water. And then as we go towards the lower pH in the water, below 7, the acidic range, we have a dominant form of the acid form of chlorine in the water. As our pH goes higher than 7, we start seeing more of what's called the ion form of chlorine in the water. And if we get to pH of 8, then we have a dominant form of the ion form of chlorine. So it's just about chemistry. It's going to do whatever chlorine we're using in the water, we're going to put it in there, and depending on the pH, then it's going to convert to either an acid form or an ion form. And why we're so worried about pH and chlorine, it's if we can get our chlorine to be mostly the acid form, that lower pH, then we've got 80 to 300 times more of value as a sanitizer out of that chlorine than if we have chlorine used at a higher pH. So, in the US, our EPA, which monitors water quality, they don't even consider free chlorine unless the majority of it is the acid form of chlorine. So forget the chemistry lesson. If you can just have, if you're going to use chlorine, you got to figure out a way to get your pH to at least 7, if not slightly below it, in order to get the most value out of that chlorine. So that if we've got 2 parts per million chlorine, then we're going to have a better kill time or a better control of organisms than if we have 2 parts per million chlorine and the pH is 8. Contact time. Here's something I think that sometimes that might be where my friends with the higher chlorine residuals are finding benefits is if we're going to have lower chlorine residual levels, then we've got to increase the amount of time that chlorine is in contact with that water in order to make sure that we're controlling any potential challenges there. So as our water moves faster through the system, may be some benefit to bumping up the residual in order to compensate for that low contact time. How much chlorine is too much? I get asked this all the time. Even though I tell people 2 to 4 parts per million, the first question I usually get asked by producers, well, how much chlorine is too much? And the real question here is not how much chlorine is too much, it's how much of the product that you're using to put chlorine into the water, how much of that is too much? Because remember, if we're using things like bleach products, bleach is stabilized at a high pH around 11, and this requires bitter sodium hydroxide. And our birds might not mind too many things, but they don't like bitter. So how much free chlorine residual you can achieve without backing off the birds will depend on the following. 1, what is the product concentration? Are we using a 6% product like this is, that has 6% chlorine in it versus a 12%? So if we're using a 6%, then we're going to have to add more product in order to get our desired chlorine residual, versus if we're using a 12%, 10 or 12% product, it takes less. So less product, less bitterness. How has the product been stored? Has it been exposed to sunlight? Have we left the container open? How long have we left it in storage? Are we buying a 55-gallon drum and it takes 6 weeks to use the product or 6 months to use the product? Then as that drum sits there, we're losing chlorine value. What's the storage temperature? If it gets warmed, we're keeping it in a warm room, then we're losing some of the chlorine. And then we also know that if we have cold water, that's going to decrease the chlorine activation. So these are kind of the things that we got to understand more than just how much chlorine is too much. Are we using fresh, more potent product, keeping it properly stored, not allowing it to get too hot, and then giving it adequate contact time depending on water temperature? Think of those things first before we say, hey, how much chlorine can I actually use in the water? Oxidation reduction potential. So we've talked a lot about chlorine and chlorine residual, but if we really, really want to know if our chlorine is doing a good job for us, then we want to think about monitoring the oxidation reduction potential because that's going to measure the energy in the water. And if we've got free chlorine present and we've got it in that acid form, that energy value is going to be high. It's going to be greater than 600. And if the water's dirty, we don't have any free chlorine, the energy is going to be low. And what I found is if the number's below 600, then there's a potential for something to be living in that water. But if you get that ORP reading, that millivolt reading 650 to 750, maybe even 800, then you're going to have a 10-second or less kill time. If you get something like E. coli or salmonella introduced into that water, it's going to kill it fast. And hey, if you've got these readings, then at that point you can kind of tinker around with how much free chlorine you've got in there in order to achieve this and have a minimal residual. And we kind of did a little benchtop evaluation to kind of understand, well, how do pH, the ORP reading, and total free chlorine, how do they all interact? And so we took some water that had a pH of about 6.86, 20 ORP. No chlorine was in that water at this point, so it's dirty, and you have a low energy, oxidizing energy, and we had a lot of bacteria in it. We then added some chlorine to this water. Immediately our energy went up. And in this case, the bacteria was free floating in the water and it pretty much controlled it. And we were measuring 5 parts per million total, 2.5 parts per million free chlorine. Then we went on to bump the pH down a little bit more. And as we bumped that pH down, we pushed the chlorine more into that acid form, and we got more energy out of that chlorine. We never changed how much total or free chlorine residual we were measuring, but we knew we were getting more and more value out of our chlorine by the oxidation potential number. So the take-home message from this slide is not that you need a pH of 3.91, but that we can use pH adjustments and chlorine addition in order to achieve an oxidizing energy that best fits that water while maintaining decent residuals of total and free chlorine, so that we know we've not over-added product, made the water bitter, but we've got good killing power in that water. So if something gets introduced, it's not going to be able to get very far in the system. And this was some work that my last graduate student did, where she actually had dirty water. The dark blue shows that the water is really dirty. Over here, we have about 4.5 logs, so about 10,000 colony-forming units of bacteria, and a very low ORP. So these numbers on top are the ORP levels. And then we added the chlorine. Boom. Immediately, that 734 ORP would knock the bacteria down. And giving it just a little bit of retention time can't help that ORP. Kind of the take home from this, there was a strong correlation between ORP, having a good ORP number, and knocking the bacteria down to a manageable, if not zero level. So what to test when we're using our chlorine? We want to measure the chlorine residual and the ORP. We don't want to just measure the ORP because that can lead to overchlorination. Oops. Because, we don't want to just get so focused on ORP that we're adding more product, and we make the water bitter. We want to manage that ORP number and also keep an eye on the chlorine residual so that we know we've got a decent level in there and we're not adding too much bitterness to that water. So again, manage chlorine to optimize the value. We know our products have limited stability, so we want to try to turn over our chlorine products within a month. That's ideal, if not quicker than that. We want to keep the chlorine container sealed. Here was an operation that was leaving it open, dropping the hose in there, and they were just letting their chlorine gas off. And then at this point, they're just adding bitterness to the water and very little chlorine. and we don't want to expose it to sunlight. Here was an operation, they were chlorinating at the well, and they were using this clear hose, and they were just neutralizing their chlorine because it was getting exposed to the light. So pay attention to how we're using it so that we get the most value out of it. And we want to optimize our injection technology. So I've talked about we've got to lower the pH, but we got to do it in a smart way in order that we don't gas off our chlorine or lose it. And what we've learned from these Stenner pumps, these peristaltic pumps, is they just dump things into the water. And it doesn't necessarily get mixed. So if we dump one thing into the water and then immediately dump something else in the water, without getting the first thing well blended, then we can be gassing off our chlorine and then not be measuring any chlorine residual. So what one suggestion is separate the injectors about 30 times the width of the pipe size. So create a mixing chamber after the first injector, and you can just do this by like injecting the product in, bend in the pipe. That will put two at least ways of getting it blended. Maybe stabilize that pH first, and then after that we have 4 bends, mixing points, and then now we've got the water is uniform pH, and then now we're going to add our chlorine, and then that would be one smart way to do it. Another thing is mixing tanks. So you might want to add your chlorine into the mixing tank, give it some retention time, contact time, get it well blended, and then after the mixed tank, add your acidifier. Here's another form of mixed tank that I saw. Mixed tank here, where it just increased size in the pipe so that the water kind of splashes in there and gets mixed. And I've seen some operations where when it came to here, if they were chlorinating, they were getting some crystallization around that chlorine injection point. And that's just because the pH is so high. It's a pH of 8 water. And then the chlorine adds high pH that was crystallizing out the calcium and sodium. So in that case, you definitely want to lower your pH first, get your pH to at least 7 or slightly below 7, so that at the chlorine injector, you won't get that crystallization occurring. Chlorine dioxide is a strong oxidizer. It's recently become very popular. But what we found is it is much more effective at a higher pH. So it's the reverse of chlorine. It's going to give us its most value at a pH of 8 versus 6. Take-home message I want everyone to remember here is if we're using a lot of acidifiers, organic acids, or products that lower the pH in our water system, and we're using chlorine dioxide, we may not be getting the most value out of that chlorine dioxide. We're not lowering the pH a lot, then chlorine dioxide is fine. But if we're doing a lot to lower that pH below 7, getting it close to 6, you may want to think about using chlorine. Target residual chlorine dioxide of up to 5 ppm, free residual of around 1 to 2 ppm is recommended. These products can be available as a ready-to-use solution of sodium chlorite. I don't feel as comfortable recommending these already ready-to-use solutions as I am recommending the systems that add a liquid sodium chlorite and an acid into a mixing chamber. Either this is a great style of mixing chamber, or here where it's got adequate mixing length to it chamber, and we've got check valves so that the water can't bleed back to the product. So once we get these two mixed together in the right ratios, then we can get a 60 to 80% chlorine dioxide mixture, and then that will get pushed into the water system. Best when the activation chamber promotes mixing. We really need some agitation if possible to get that same chlorite, that acid mixed together in order to get that conversion to chlorine dioxide. So the better the system, the better value you're going to have on your chlorine dioxide sanitation program. Hydrogen peroxide is a great product. We target 25 to 50 parts per million residual in the drinking water. If we're having some challenges, or if maybe we're going to be leaving that water a few days during brooding, we might want to target a little bit higher residual, 75 to 100 ppms. It's not going to be as good at oxidizing iron and manganese as chlorine and chlorine dioxide are, but we found it's a great product to use for sulfur oxidation. So a lot of operations with high sulfur levels, sulfide levels, will use a generic hydrogen peroxide, oxidize that sulfide, capture it out with a filter, and then they may boost the hydrogen peroxide residual, or then they may complement it with a chlorine or chlorine dioxide. I'm a big fan of stabilized products like PoxyClean, Oxyblast, those products, because they last longer in the water. And what we see is when we add these stabilized products, whether it's a 50% product or 20% paracetic, when we add those 16 mils to a liter of water, and then we add a milliliter of this stock solution into 128 mils of water, then of course, if we start with a higher concentrate, we're going to have higher hydrogen peroxide residuals that we're measuring. But then here's the benefit. If we leave it days for days, we're going to continue to see that residual. We've actually measured active residual up to 60 days later. You're not going to get that with chlorine or chlorine dioxide. And you're not going to get it necessarily with a non-stabilized hydrogen peroxide product. It's going to kind of die out. So I'm a big fan of these products for in the water systems during brooding, when the water's slow moving, it's warm. We got a lot of potential there for microbial growth. Have these products in the water, we can kind of keep that water protected till those birds start moving it on their own. And then you might want to switch to another type of product if you want to. Some of the last things I want to talk about is my monitoring and verification program. And if you're not monitoring and documenting, then how can you prove that you have a good water sanitation program? You can't. And if we don't have a good daily water monitoring program, or at least weekly, bi-weekly, then if that injector happens to go out, a good monitoring program is going to catch it. And you're going to limit the time that water is unprotected. I loved going to this operation. We were going from barn to barn and just great hydrogen peroxide residual. Boom, we came to this barn, nothing. And immediately my host was on the phone talking to the barn manager. She says, "Oh yeah, well the injector went out. I just hadn't around to getting it fixed." Well, that's back to everybody's got to buy into the importance of water quality, because that injector needed to be fixed as soon as he knew it was out. And if we hadn't happened to come along, these guys would have been off water sanitation for 2 or 3 days, probably broke with Bordetella, and then the product would have been blamed that it didn't work because the birds got Bordetella, when in reality, the product was fine. It was lack of application that was the challenge. And water sanitation verification can confirm what works for you on an operation. Love this work this operation was doing. They were doing line cleaning, they were swabbing, and they were coming behind. And I mean, we could probably use this water in a hospital, as clean as it is. So they know they're starting with as good a water as they can. Here in this operation, they're monitoring into the line, no bacteria. That's what we want to see. It's what we want to ensure that our birds are getting. No bacteria in that water. Quick little touch on pH, because we kind of get lost with this a lot. So understanding pH is just a measure of how acidic or basic the water is. So again, 7 is neutral. Below 7, it's acidic. Above 7, then we're in the alkaline, the basic range. The things that affect pH, things like the alkalinity of the water, bicarbonates, sulfates, these buffer against the pH adjusting towards the basic range. So we have a lot of alkalinity, bicarbonate in the water. If we're adding an acid, we may or may not get any benefits of lowering the pH, depending on what type of acid we're adding. So if we're adding an inorganic or mineral acid, these tend to be strong. The phosphoric, sulfuric, hydrochloric, sodium bisulfate, which will convert to sulfuric, These strong acids, they give up their acid so that they help to overcome that alkalinity and get that pH lowered. Unlike organic acids, these are weak acids: acetic, citric, propionic, formic, butyric. Those don't want to give acid into the water. They want to kind of hang on to it. So we're adding these organic acids, and we got water that's in the pH range of 8 with a lot of alkalinity. We're not going to see much pH shift. And sometimes what people want to do, they want to over add these products trying to achieve lower pHs. And all they do when they over add organic acids in these highly alkaline waters or higher alkaline waters is make the water to where the animals, birds don't want to drink it. So what I'm recommending is on organic acids, the microbial benefits of organic acids center around the weak acid remaining intact, the acid not giving up its hydrogen when the pH is lower. It stays whole. But this hydrogen, when it goes into the bacterial cell as a whole acid, then inside that bacteria cell, the pH is higher. And at that point, that weak acid says, oh, I will give up my acid. And it lowers the pH inside the bacteria and killing it. So the cell tries to get that acid out of there and it overworks the cell. It also does the same in a lot of ways in our lower gut. So if we have some birds that are not feeling well, they're off feed, the intestinal tract pH wants to go up in that case. If they're still drinking a little bit of vinegar in their water, that vinegar is going to help keep that pH buffered in that intestinal tract and help to potentially keep out things like necrotic entericid. So bottom line on pH, focusing only on pH without understanding the alkalinity or buffering capacity of the water, as well as what type of acid can lead to problems. Adding acetic acid to water with a high buffering capacity won't give much pH drop, but the presence of the weak organic acid can still provide some gut health benefits. And dropping the pH of the water with little or no alkalinity and naturally low pH can be detrimental to the bird performance. Well, that's something that I rarely see in Canada. That's something more on the East Coast, area where we'll see these very low pH waters. So probably not going to be a concern for you guys. Kind of wrapping up here. Just want to remind everybody, if you have problems, this is just kind of a quick diagnostic tool. We have bird health issues, poor starts, high 7-day mortalities, feed passage, enteritis, respiratory issues, maybe some poor reproductive performance. Then suspect contamination. Again, everything loves to live in water. Nothing surprises me anymore when people show me what they found in their water. So something may be going on with that water. Bacteria may be linked to the minerals in the water or something that's being added. Birds don't have issues that don't seem to be disease related. They look good. Livability is fine, even great, but the weights are below target, feed conversion's high, maybe we're not getting enough eggs. Suspect a water consumption problem. There's not enough. There's restriction point somewhere in the system, or they don't like it. Maybe we put too much of organic acid in that water trying to lower the pH, and we've made it to where they don't want to drink it. So, and then problem solving water, then again, look at that supply, follow that water through the whole system, evaluate all the points in the system. Make sure you've done those water tests: mineral, pH, bacteria, drip and swap. How old is the water system? These can be some challenges. Has a thorough water system inventory been conducted? Has there been any changes or work to the water system? Does the producer clean the system between flocks? How, with what? You clean the whole system. Again, just cleaning the system. I've seen more operations turned around with good water cleaning system, water cleaning than anything else. And then what products are being used in the water? Sanitizers, acids, vitamins, therapeutics. What are we using? Are we using them in a way that we still allow them to complement the water sanitation program so that they work together and not against each other? So with that, I'd like to wrap up my presentation. Except water can create risks for flocks. Identify, quantify your water contaminants, again, your minerals, your pH, bacteria, yeast, mold, other. Have access to a good diagnostic lab, submit a water filter out of the barn, see what they culture. Prepare a strategy to reduce, eliminate challenges. Use between flock line cleaning to reduce the challenges. And then utilize a daily water sanitizer best suited for the operation, compatible with the water, easy to use, easy to monitor, cost effective in the scheme of things. If you've got good health in your flocks, it's hard to put a price tag on water sanitation. Monitor and verify the program works. And if you believe in a water program, your people will too. Thank you very much.